Welcome to the Critical Christian Podcast.
We're your hosts, Dan
and Justin. We ask critical questions about the Bible and provide questionable answers.
I'll edit that.
Yeah, we're never editing any of these videos. So
that's good humor. All right.
This week we are in Genesis 46 and 47,
and maybe 48.
Definitely not 48. And I already have the title of the live up. Too late.
It'll be a bonus. All
right. So 46 is short.
All right.
We're not going to spend a ton of time on there. And I know everyone loves to read genealogies. I went through the genealogies. There's some things there. A lot of it's not worth talking about. So we're not going to waste a ton of time on chapter 46. And then we'll move right on to 47. So in the narrative of Joseph so far, where are we?
Oh, well. So Joseph concocted some sort of circuitous plan.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph concocted some sort of circuitous plan to ensnare his brothers in his web of, or in their web of, or to find out if they've actually, repented and are now contrite about what they did. Basically, he's trying to reconstruct a similar scenario with their other youngest brother, Benjamin, to see if they'll, throw him under the bus, or if they'll, throw their body on the grenade instead. And as we have seen, at least one of them, Judah, says, no, take me instead of Benjamin. And Joseph is like, well, 1 out of 11. That's not bad, really.
Right, yeah.
1 out of 10 since Benjamin.
At least we know Judah seems to be upright.
Actually, Simeon, he's still in prison, right?
Well, I mean, he
can't really, He
was taken out. They left him there for 1.5 years, though, remember?
Yeah.
That's crazy. 1.5 years they left him in there.
So I might not ask him how he feels. He'd be like, I want to be free, man.
How pissed off would you be?
I don't know. It depends on how you're treated. I almost feel like Joseph probably said, hey, listen, this is me, this is you. Hey, it's going to be all right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm inclined to believe you.
I mean, it just seems like, Joseph doesn't seem like a bad guy.
No.
I mean, he cries all the time.
Dude is a crier. Yeah.
Yeah. So, what I have to say about that. Oh, and then he reveals everything and gives them all some land in Goshen, which is, to the south of Egypt. It's not the best land, or maybe it is. It really depends on who you ask. I mean, according to Joseph, it's not great. According to the Pharaoh, it's the best there ever was.
Yeah, according to Pharaoh, it's the best of the land.
So, it really depends on who you ask.
Yeah, it really does. We'll read a little bit more into that. So all that being said, now they have sent for their father Jacob, and the whole family, all of them, are going to be moving to Egypt in chapter 46. So without further ado, let's jump right into verse 1.
So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father. So Beersheba was on the way to Goshen?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, now I think about it, maybe God was upset because he had told them to stay in Canaan or future Israel, and instead they all went to Egypt. But of course, that opens all sorts of other problems because God seemed to have orchestrated all of this. But I'm just saying, weren't the Jews supposed to remain near the promised land?
Yeah. That's kind of the thing, is God wants them to subdue the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, like, the first thing he does, once they start multiplying, is to take them into Egypt.
Yeah.
But it seems orchestrated, like you said. And remember earlier, we were told that they were going to go into the land of Egypt because the sins of the Amorites have not yet been completed. That was earlier in Genesis.
Yeah, what's that?
The Amorites is like a term for the people, like the ancient Canaanites.
Okay.
And so in Genesis, God says that there's going to be a period in which they're in Egypt until the sins of the Amorites have been completed. So God seems to be orchestrating this to stay in Egypt, as you said,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then after the 430 years, he's going to cast judgment on Egypt, although they didn't really do anything wrong. And then he's going to cast judgment on the Amorites. And,
I'm sorry. Who are the Amorites? I do not understand at all.
Amorites was a dominant clan in ancient Canaan, and the Bible uses the phrase Amorite to refer to Canaanites.
So Amorite and Canaanite, same thing.
Roughly synonymous.
All right. So what happened? The Canaanites also went to Egypt?
Mm,
Okay.
we don't know.
That means no.
Well, we're not told in the
So
Bible.
why are they being punished?
The Amorites? Because they're evil, wicked people who are, like, according to the Bible, bad.
Well, what does that have to do with Egypt?
What do you mean?
Weren't we talking about Egypt?
Yeah. About God orchestrating their travel into Egypt?
The Canaanites.
No.
This is fun.
The Israelites.
Right, but you mentioned the Amorites for some reason.
Yeah, because earlier in Genesis, when God warns or tells Abraham that his ancestors or his grandchildren or whatever are going to be in Egypt for 430 years, the statement is made because the sin of the Amorites is not yet completed.
The sin.
Yeah.
Not the punishment, the sin.
Right, yeah. God needs to, apparently, the sin of the Amorite people needs to multiply to the point into where it's so grievous that the Lord has to act.
That he has a reason to kill them.
That kind of seems...
He's like, I want to kill him, but...
It seems to be the implication.
Okay, that's...
Right?
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
So everything in Genesis appears to be orchestrated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
A real thinker.
Which makes you wonder, if it's all orchestrated, how is God punishing anybody for anything?
Well, I mean, if you ask the Calvinists,
yeah,
you would say he shouldn't punish anyone ever.
Well, yeah, according to the Calvinists, God has the prerogative to do anything he wants with anybody he wants merely because he's God, and like divine command theory rules the roost.
But it's all been like preordained ahead of time, right? You can't change your fate.
If you're a Calvinist, yeah.
Yeah, so...
But I was always kind of an open theist.
Yeah, well, nobody here's a Calvinist. Come on.
I know.
But my point is, they're silly.
Anyways, to your point, I agree. Not only does this appear to be orchestrated for Jacob to go there, but remember in the very next verse we're about to read, it says God speaks to Jacob in a vision and says, "Hey, don't worry, it's going to be okay." But to the point of Beersheba being along the way, I thought it was interesting that he stopped at Beersheba, because Beersheba wasn't that important to Jacob earlier in his life. And then I remembered that it was important to Abraham and to Isaac, especially to Isaac. Isaac, it says in Genesis 26, 23 through 24, it says, from there he went up to Beersheba. That night the Lord appeared to him and said, I am the God, the Elohim of your father Abraham. Do not be afraid, I am with you. I will bless you, and I will increase the number of your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. So I would imagine Isaac might have communicated this story to his son at some point, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that makes sense. Like even if Jacob didn't have a long history with Beersheba, like if there was a really, like, Ford Motor Company, my dad worked there for 30 something years, very important to him, even though I never worked there. But when I would come back to the area where we grew up, I would drive by the Ford Motor Plant just to see, oh, hey, there's the old Ford Motor Plant. You know, it's kind of a, I don't know,
nostalgia.
Yeah, it's like a nostalgic situation there. So I'm curious if part of his offering is, because some people have suggested that, well, he was scared for the journey, so he stopped to make a sacrifice to the Lord, you know, to help preserve him.
I mean, that's possible, right?
It definitely is possible, but he could have done that in Hebron before he left.
I mean, I'm saying it's possible. I don't know if I would believe that.
Yeah. I think it's more likely that this was just a site of great importance to the
I feel like
family.
at this point, Jacob probably has enough faith in God to know he'll be all right.
Yeah, I think so.
Also, he's really old, so
Dude, he's super old. In
Yes.
fact, we're gonna talk more about that as we go on today because I did a timeline with Jacob and Joseph,
okay.
their ages at various stages during the story.
You did that?
Yeah,
I did not.
and it's wild. In fact, we briefly talked about it way back when we were doing Jacob and Esau, but we just didn't have time to really break down anyone's ages. We had some guesses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't have guesses anymore.
Okay.
I know how old they were
Wait.
during the narrative. We're going to talk about that, and it's eye opening. Anyways, should we do Genesis 46:2?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. In my head, I have Jacob going, Yeah, what? That was all I had to say.
It's interesting that in the Jacob narratives, God always appears in a dream to somebody. And then same thing to King Abimelech. Doesn't God appear in a dream?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
You were telling me that, was it the north or the south?
Yeah, the
Especially
Elohist.
liked dreams.
Yeah, dreams were super popular according to the Elohist tradition. And so a lot of times you can almost assume that when God speaks in a dream, it probably came from the north.
Mhm.
But like the question I always had, and even when I was a young person reading some of these stories in Catholic school, like if you're having a dream, if you encounter God during a dream, how do you know you're really encountering God, or how do you know you're just not just having a dream?
Yeah, you got me on that one.
Right? Like
I mean, at least with the Pharaoh, he had 2 dreams, so he could confirm it. I mean, they're probably not going to have 2 back-to-back dreams that are similar, so that probably helped
yeah.
him to go.
Joseph did.
Huh?
Joseph had 2 dreams too.
Oh yeah, that he told his brothers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
first
that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would imagine if they're repeats,
Mm.
then if you have it more than once, then it might be that might lead you to believe, okay, something's happening.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get too off topic. Kidding, I do. Say the North talks a lot about dreams. South, what do they do in lieu of that? In like the same area of the story.
So what happens in the Yahwist text, which is really interesting?
That's the South.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. God appears as a man all the time. And so we talked about it before. There's a really great book called When Gods Were Men. I definitely recommend reading it. But according to the Elohist text, God appears all the time as a man. Like think about even the angels being called men when they went to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then it says, Yahweh rained down fire from heaven from Yahweh. The name Yahweh pervades the Abrahamic story. And every time you hear about an angel or divine being or Yahweh, it always describes it as a man. Isn't that weird?
Mm-hmm.
The only exception to that is when Jacob wrestles the angel. And in that particular case, it refers to the angel as a man. But I think that's the only time where a divine entity in like the Jacob narrative is called a man.
All right. So is there like a takeaway from this? I mean, I assume, this is all real. So there's a real thing that happened. So what was it?
Oh,
Did God appear in a dream or as a man? And why did one decide one and one the other?
I have a theory.
All right.
It's my theory that a lot of people in the North probably associated dreams with God, because if you read any of the ancient texts from like Syria or Phoenicia or from the northern regions, a lot of these ancient cultures believed in interpreting dreams, in doing sympathetic magic and blood rituals and things like that. They're very much into things today that we might consider like New Agey.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, to them, they thought it was like a divine science.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you don't see that in the southern regions. The gods were very real, they were tangible, they were very corporeal, they were very manlike. And so my guess is that if somebody encountered a deity in a dream in the South, they might not have really believed it was even anything more than a dream. You know, they don't have the background to think that, oh, this was an encounter with God. So if they thought it was just a silly dream, I mean, they're not going to communicate that with anybody. The same thing in the North. If you're in the North and you dream and you encounter, your family deity, you're going to write that stuff down. You're going to tell your grandkids about it. Like, it's going to become a big thing. And if you see somebody who's just a man who claims to bring divine revelation, you might just consider that like a priest. You might not really consider that a divine entity.
Is it all right if I don't feel like you answered my question?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I must have misunderstood it then.
Well, so the North and the South are writing about the same exact story, correct? Same exact story. They're saying that, Jacob, well, here's a question. So for this one, it says Jacob had a dream, and that means this was probably written by the North. Is there another story written by the South that talks about Jacob, meeting God or man?
Oh, there almost certainly could have been, yeah. The question is, why do we have one narrative rather than the other?
Uh-huh.
And I think that's just a matter, as we've discussed before, sometimes, certain parts of the story get left on the cutting floor.
So who are we to believe? That Jacob had a dream, or that he was visited by God in human form, or none of the above?
Could be both.
Okay.
Yeah, God could visit you in a dream. He could also visit you in some sort of a mortal manifestation.
Yeah, but you definitely write about both of those experiences then, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying is, if you're writing from a northern perspective, you might not fully understand a physical manifestation as being a divine entity, whereas in the South, you're already predisposed to thinking that.
So in the North, if you see a physical manifestation of God, you might be like, oh, I must be dreaming.
You might just think that, well, God gave some dude a message or a wisdom, right? It might be, well, this guy must be a priest or something, and God spoke something to him. Whereas in the South, you might equate that, no, that's like a divine manifestation. That's one of God's messengers.
Still not getting it, but I guess we can.
Okay.
It just seems like if the North has Jacob dreaming and the South has God as a man, then those are pretty different.
Yeah.
Was this just the story being, translated over time and getting confused, and so they had to decide what God was going to be? Because it seems, honestly, a dream and a God in physical form are really different.
Are you under the impression that God didn't appear in a dream to anybody from the South?
Well, I mean, he must have.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
But
they didn't write it down.
Why not?
Because they probably just thought it was a dream.
Okay.
Okay, so it wasn't important to them to transmit that dream because they probably didn't understand it.
And for the North, if somebody came to them in person, they would presume it's not God.
Yeah, they would probably just presume that it was just a normal human being that is speaking for God.
But dreams is how they would really get the message.
Yeah.
Oh.
So the forms of communication that was impactful for their social background are the ones that they wrote down. It's possible that God did visit people in the North in a very physical manifestation, but they didn't fully understand what was happening, or they might not have fully understood that it was like a messenger or like an angel of Yahweh or something like that.
So how do we know about Jacob here? How do we know that it was a dream, not a physical manifestation?
Oh, because it says it's a dream.
Yeah, but the North is writing this.
Yep.
But if the South were writing this, they would probably not say that.
I think what you might be suggesting is that, are you saying that it's the same singular event, but being described in two different ways?
Yeah.
No, I don't think this was happening
Okay.
at all.
What's happening?
I think God appeared in a dream.
And it's okay, but other times it's not God in a dream. Him in real life.
Yeah, I think he manifests probably in both methods.
All right, let's continue. Now that we spent 10 minutes on that.
Okay.
All right.
Verses 3 and 4.
So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. All right, so maybe he was fearing, which is why he sacrificed to Beersheba.
Right.
I mean, ahead of time, I was like, why would he be afraid? But if God has to kind of soothe his, reassure him.
Although every time God appears to somebody, he says, do not fear.
But it says, do not fear to go down to Egypt.
Oh, that's an interesting point. Yeah, he says, do not fear to go down to Egypt. I didn't look at it in Hebrew, but the New King James does a pretty good job about translating the Hebrew like nearly word for word.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm inclined to believe that it's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Then he says, I will go down with you to Egypt.
Right.
And I will also surely bring you up again. Joseph will put his hand on your eye.
Yeah.
So, I mean, after that,
Although he doesn't bring them up, he brings up their children 430 years later.
I guess I didn't really know what and I will surely bring you up again meant. Is surely bring you up again.
They carry his bones out when they leave.
Back to Canaan / the Promised Land or what have you.
Yeah.
Is that what they're talking about?
Could be.
You don't think so?
I don't know, actually. It could be. It could be referring to the Exodus. It could be referring to his bones being taken out.
Mm-hmm. Because wouldn't Jacob look at it as though, oh, hey, I'm going back to Canaan after this?
You'd
Right?
think so.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know what he meant with all our modern intelligence.
Right, because the famine's not going to last forever. He might have thought, well, as soon as the famine's over, I'm heading back to Canaan.
Right. And it seems like God was kind of confirming this, right?
Kind of seems that way, doesn't it?
I'll take care of you now, and then don't worry, you'll go back to your home.
Right. It's interesting, like, how little information is really given here, though. God's just like, hey, go down in Egypt. I'll bring you back.
Yeah.
Like, when and how many and in what fashion?
Or we didn't want to say.
Yeah, that was my thought, is if God gave all the information, if God at that moment said, hey, you're going to go down there, you're going to die in Egypt, you're never coming back, your children will become slaves in Egypt, and then 430 years later, I'll send a bunch of plagues, and then they'll come back to the land, but they're also going to have to wage war against the Canaanites who are inhabiting the land, and a great deal of them are going to die and pass away from war and plagues and sickness.
Doesn't even say, listen, it's going to be a bit of a bumpy ride for the next 400 years, but you're right.
If he told all of that to Jacob up front, would he still go?
Yes, obviously, because he very much trusts God.
He does. Yeah. And he might not have much of a choice because he needs the food.
Right.
Right? They got to get that grain.
Still, to kind of condemn the rest of your progeny for the next 430 years just because you're hungry seems a bit.
It's a little rash. I agree. Yeah. If I had to choose between my entire progeny being enslaved for 430 years or maybe me being hungry for a little while.
Or even dying of hunger.
Yeah.
I mean,
because how many of your family members are going to die in slavery?
Right.
If it was as severe as what the Bible tells us, I can only imagine that some of them died under the very harsh conditions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's possible if he had told. I mean, that's the thing. He already knows that Jacob is definitely going to come regardless. So why couldn't he just tell him the truth, right?
Right.
No, it's not like he's talking to.
Esau, Mr. marrying the Canaanites over here.
Yeah. Might have to fudge things for him. All right. 5-7.
Yep.
And Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones and their wives, in the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So they took their livestock and their goods, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and went to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him. His sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt.
Yeah. Listen to what he says. His sons and his sons' sons, his daughters and his sons' daughters. Why didn't he say his daughters' daughters?
My guess is women don't really own children the same way men do.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So they're included in his son's daughters, you know?
Yeah, I don't think there was a slight by any means happening here, but I do think it kind of indicates something very important, and that is lineage by default passes through the male, right? Even if you have grandchildren, they are not the children of your daughter. They are the children of your son. If your daughter marries somebody else, then those children are now the children of your son-in-law, not of your daughter.
Right.
They belong to somebody else's lineage now. Isn't that wild?
It is really crazy. Like they're just bypassing DNA completely.
Yeah, so like if that's your way of reckoning lineage, how much more important is it for you to make sure that you marry your daughter into a good family as opposed to just sell her off to get a good bride price?
I don't know. It wouldn't matter to you much since they'd be out of your lineage, right?
Yeah, maybe.
You know, like, here's my daughter. She isn't good for much. I'd rather her not stay in my lineage. She can stay in somebody else's lineage. See?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's a good thought, though. So I ran into one really interesting factoid. A couple of them reading the lineages.
Right.
And then like a head scratcher. So when we get to Judah, there are grandchildren listed for Judah, where there were no other grandchildren listed. It was just here's like the clans of of Naphtali, and then Naphtali's children. But when we get to Judah, we've got grandchildren. We got Judah's kids, and Judah's grandchildren, which is really interesting. And it ends with Perez, which is a forefather of King David, interestingly enough. So I thought, well, that's interesting that they're kind of giving Judah a spotlight here, which we've seen is pretty common. But then in verse 17, they did the same thing with Asher. And Asher is completely insignificant in like the vast majority of the Old Testament.
All right, who's Asher?
Is one of the 12 kids of Jacob.
Really?
Yeah.
Why have I never heard his name before, ever?
Because he's completely insignificant to the Old Testament, just about. He's not a big deal.
Just like the first time we've met him.
No, he's been mentioned before, but it's weird that the only grandchildren listed are from Judah. They're like, oh, that makes sense because Judah's kind of like a really big deal.
Yeah.
And then there's Asher, and I was like, wait, what?
So do Judah's grandchildren, they play a part, right?
Yeah.
But no, none of the other grandchildren do.
Not really. So so Asher's grandchild, Beriah.
Just one?
I think that's the only. Well, I listed all their kids. Hold on, let me open up the spreadsheet. So I made a spreadsheet of all the children and grandchildren in Genesis so far, because I was having a hard time keeping track myself. I was like, oh my gosh. All right, so if we go down. All right, Asher has 6 children, so pretty big clan actually. And when you get down to the 4th child, Berea has 2 children listed. That's Heber and Malkiel, and that's the only other time, other than the tribe of Judah, when there's grandchildren listed. In the tribe of Judah, we've got 2 grandchildren, Hezron and Hamul.
Okay, and what was there? What did they do?
They're very important. Hezron goes all the way down to the tribe of David. Goes all the way down to King David. I mean, in fact, Hezron was married to Ephrathah. Ephrathah was a very important woman in the lineage of King David. Is actually mentioned in Micah 5:2, when it says that there's a Messiah that's going to be born in Bethlehem. It calls it Bethlehem of Ephrathah, basically indicating that Ephrathah is the ancient matriarch to Bethlehem, which is how Bethlehem originated as a child, a grandchild of Ephrathah.
Bethlehem is the name of a child?
Yeah, so Bethlehem, before it was a city, was actually the name of one of Ephrathah's grandchildren.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Anyways, the long and short of it is, I couldn't find a good reason.
So for Hamel, anything?
No, I don't know anything about Hamel, whether or not he became anything.
Or it's just if you list one god, you have to list them all.
Maybe. But yeah, and you know what? I probably could have spent more time digging and digging and digging.
Well, do we know if Jacob's other children did have grandchildren, or if it was just these 2?
They did, yeah. If you go to First Chronicles, you'll see the rest of them. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a second, because the number of grandchildren and regular children are a little bit interesting. Okay, I'll give you I pulled out one good example of this. Because it says, remember, there's 70. And when you read the text, at the end of each section, it says, these are the number of children that were born to Leah, and these are the number that were born to Bilhah and Zilpah, so on and so forth. So I just added up all the numbers because I wanted to see if they actually matched. And then I compared them to the genealogies in the book of Numbers and the genealogies in Chronicles, and I found they didn't match there either. But there's only one case that seemed kind of out of pocket. In verse 21, it says, it lists the sons of Benjamin. The sons of Benjamin in First Chronicles 7:5-7 were much different. It says the sons of Benjamin were Bela, Becher, and Jidel, 3 in all. So there's only 3 sons of Benjamin, according to the book of Chronicles, which contradicts what we have in the book of Numbers. Numbers 26:38-41 lists 5 different sons and attributes two children, Ard and Naaman, as grandchildren of one of those 5 sons. So interestingly enough, in the book of Numbers, there are 7 children attributed to Benjamin, but 2 of them are grandchildren. Whereas those 2 grandchildren, if you go to Genesis, are listed as actual children of Benjamin. So in the lineage of Benjamin in Genesis, there's Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ahi, Rosh, Mupim, Hupim, and Ard. But both Ard and Naaman are listed as grandchildren, not children.
It's not unheard of to have, a father take in somebody's grandchildren, their actual children, right?
Right. Well, that's what we don't know.
No, that happened with somebody recently. Who was it?
I don't know.
Yeah, somebody recent though.
I don't know.
All right, that was helpful.
You don't know who it is?
Well, it was either Joseph or Jacob, maybe. Probably not Joseph. We don't know anything about him yet.
Somebody's grandchildren? You lost me on this one.
I bet I did. I lost myself. All right. We'll probably have to.
Well, that's a viable solution.
Right.
We don't really know. All we do know is that somewhere along the lines, those two individuals were listed as sons of Benjamin, but somewhere else listed as grandchildren of Benjamin.
I mean, it's possible that their father died or something.
Yeah, it is. It's possible that their father died, and that they were taken in
by Benjamin.
By
right?
Benjamin. We don't know that.
Who were they sons of again? Of Asher, right?
Benjamin.
Right before that, I mean. Or who were they the grandchildren of? This is confusing for me.
Right. So Benjamin, according to Genesis, has 7 sons.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the same lineage in the book of Numbers, he doesn't have 7 sons.
Okay.
He has 5 sons and 2 grandchildren.
Okay.
So 2 of the grandchildren are listed as sons of Bela as opposed to sons of Benjamin.
Okay. And Bela, is that a male?
Bela is a son of Benjamin, yeah.
So Bela probably died. That's what we're saying?
No. That's what you're saying.
Oh. Well, okay.
But Bela is never listed as dying in the narrative and giving his children to his father.
Okay, but that's a given with the information we have now, right?
No, I don't think it is.
Okay.
I think it's just a scribal error. That's why if you go to the Book of Chronicles, Book of Chronicles is missing 4 of the sons.
Mm-hmm.
Book of Chronicles only lists 3 children of Benjamin.
I mean, I'm not sure they would mention. So I'm sorry. Who was the father of these 2 whatever something? Oh, I hate all these names.
Bela?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who was his father?
Benjamin.
Right. Okay. So would it really say that one of Benjamin's children died? Because they all died eventually, right? Because everybody dies.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he just died while he was on a hunting trip or something. And so Benjamin took his children, and there wasn't really any reason to add this information to the Bible.
Right, but you're assuming that Benjamin was still living and that he was able to take in these children,
okay,
as opposed to going to like the brother, right? So if Bela had passed away, typically one of Bela's brothers would have been required.
Well, did Bela have brothers?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
6 of them.
Maybe so they all died.
So one of the brothers would have had to go into his wife and create a son so that his name can carry on and their estate would stay with him. Remember, that's levirate marriage?
It's what?
Levirate marriage.
Well, that's what the
Book of Ruth is all about.
Or something?
Yeah, and Onan. Remember that story with Judah?
Yeah, they didn't want to do it, or one of them didn't.
Yeah, he had to do his brotherly duty.
Yeah, and he didn't, so he got smitten.
Right. So in Numbers 26, it says, the sons of Benjamin, according to their families, were Bela, the family of the Belaites, of Ashbel, the family of the Ashbelites, of Aharam, the family of the Aharamites, so on and so forth. And it lists 5 sons. And then it says the sons of Bela were Ard and Naaman. And it says here that Ard also had children, right? It says of Ard, the family of the Ardites. So he must have had children. And of Naaman, the family of the Naamanites. These are the sons of Benjamin according to their families. Of those who were numbered of them were 45. Now here's my thought. I think there's a scribal error here. Because listen to the last line. It says, these are the sons of Benjamin according to their families. If you simply remove the statement where it says, and the sons of Bela were, then all of these 7 sons are now Benjamins again. I'd be curious to look at the Hebrew manuscript and see if somebody copied the same phrase twice by accident.
I bet you would be curious.
Because that happens often.
Is there a way to find out that manuscript?
Yeah,
Or
I
does
mean,
it not exist?
I don't have it on me.
Oh, but it's around here somewhere?
It's on my bookshelf, yeah.
Really? That's
Yeah.
crazy. All right, my eyes are kind of glazing over.
I know.
Yeah.
I just bring that up because I just thought it'd be interesting because someone's at some point is going to look at the genealogies and wonder why the genealogy in Genesis doesn't match the genealogy in Numbers and Chronicles. And I think the very clear answer is the book of Numbers is probably wrong, and the book of Chronicles probably has a scribal error.
Or maybe Bella died.
Oh, actually, I said that backward. I think the book of Numbers has a scribal error, and the book of Chronicles is just wrong.
Or maybe Bella died, and Benjamin took in his kid.
No, the brother would have to take in the kids.
You mean Benjamin's sons?
One of Benjamin's sons would have to take in his wife.
Okay, but is it possible that they didn't? And Benjamin is like, I like these kids.
Well,
I'm just going to take them in.
I mean, anything is possible, but that wouldn't be likely.
But it's possible.
Well, I mean, God giving him a rocket ship to go to the moon is theoretically possible since nothing's impossible for God.
Uh-huh.
The question is what's likely to happen.
Uh-huh. Wait. Didn't Jacob give his Joseph's portion to his 2 sons, right? Is that what happened?
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, Jacob had adopted Joseph's 2 sons, right?
No,
In a way.
definitely not.
In a way.
Not even close.
Well, if they're part of the portion and thing, what's that called?
The allotment?
Yeah, if they're part of the allotment, then they kind of have to be related in some way, in a real way, because you know what I mean? You can't just give an allotment to like this one guy down the street that you like, right? That made sense what I said.
I don't follow.
So Jacob was like, listen, Joseph, I like your 2 children a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you already got a lot of stuff going for you. And your children are poor. So I'm going to take them under my wings. And they're going to be part of my family. And then when I die, they're going to get a share of the allotment. But it's going to be the share you were going to get anyhow. But you don't need it. And therefore, they are now part of his family.
Yeah, but giving out allotments on your deathbed is different than being adopted and raised by your grandfather.
Well, I said adopted. I didn't say raised.
So you think he adopted him on his deathbed?
I don't know. Throwing things out there.
Yeah. In 1 Chronicles 7, it gives the family of Benjamin.
Mm-hmm.
It says the sons of Benjamin were Bela, Betcher, and Jediel.
So he only had 3 sons.
According to Chronicles, he only had 3 sons.
Okay.
And remember, in the book of Numbers, the 2 sons that appear to be spuriously given to Bela, says, and the sons of Bela were Ard and Naaman, even though Ard and Naaman were theoretically sons of Benjamin according to Genesis. When you look at the sons of Bela in 1 Chronicles, those children are not listed. It says the sons of Bela were Ezbon, Uzi, Uziel, Jeremoth, and Iri, 5 in all. So we've got no seemingly coherence between any of the sons of Benjamin, unfortunately, according to the biblical text.
Well, I don't know enough to argue with you other than what I've already argued with you, and I'm done. Let's move on.
Record keeping is hard. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying he might have adopted them. All right, let's do this.
Okay.
Maybe his other sons didn't want them.
Right. Right, but when you read the Chronicles, those 2 aren't listed among the sons of Bela.
Right, because they're Benjamin's sons now.
Well, how did he raise the other sons but not those 2 sons?
What 2 sons?
The 2 sons that supposedly were adopted by his father?
Right, he raised all his sons.
No.
All Bella's sons.
No, because Bela's sons were 5 in all.
Right.
Raised by Bela, according to
Oh,
Chronicles.
so Bella had 5 sons, and Benjamin only adopted 2 of them.
No.
That's what you're saying.
No, according to Chronicles, Bela had 5 sons.
Okay.
according to Numbers, Bela had 2 sons.
Okay.
According to Genesis, the 2 sons that are attributed in the book of Numbers are not his. They're actually Benjamin's.
Okay. So you're saying that Benjamin adopted 2 of Bela's sons.
No.
And then Bela kept the other 3.
No, I'm saying somebody got their wrong record
it's
keeping.
It's possible, though. What I said is
It's
true.
not.
I mean, it's possible. If Benjamin really liked his grandsons, and maybe they were good, with numbers, good for the business, what have you, and he brought them along, and Bella's like, that's fine. My other kids are good for, agrarian stuff with me.
Yeah, but we're not talking about what's possible. It's possible that Elon Musk traveled back in space-time and adopted and raised them while no one was looking.
I'm just saying it's possible. Let's continue. All right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm a good debate.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Genesis 46, 8 through 27. Nothing.
Yeah, those were omitted by you.
By me. Well, there's 6 paragraphs of all the names of the people who went to Egypt for some reason. Not much else to say, and certainly no reason to read all of them. Oh, no, it's 70 people. 8.
Yeah. So I did the math.
Uh-huh.
You're not going to like this either, but it turned out it wasn't 70.
Mm-hmm.
So here's how I think we can square the number, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The total is said to be 70. If you remove the grandchildren, that leaves you with 69 children, not 70. However, if you remove the daughters and you say, we'll just count the sons, that leaves you at 71.
Okay.
However, Genesis 46:26 says that all the persons of Jacob's household, which probably excluded Joseph, went with him, right? So when it says that they went down 70 in all, I think that does not include Joseph.
Oh, he was already there.
He was already there.
Right.
So that leaves you, according to the count, with 73. But listen to this.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
If you exclude the wives, which there are only 3 of them.
Okay.
So we assume that the wives are not counted as members of...
At this point, only 3 of Jacob's children are married?
No, the wives are not being counted at all.
Oh, Jacob's wives?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if we exclude Jacob's wives, that actually gets us down to 70 if you exclude Jacob's 3 wives.
So are we including Jacob's daughters? Are we including Jacob's daughters in the count?
Yes,
But
just not his wives.
Hey,
I'm just telling you the only way we can get to 70 so far.
I'm just saying it seems odd to include daughters but not wives, doesn't it?
I'm just telling you this is apparently the only path to 70 is what I'm trying to tell you.
I'm sure there are other paths, but go ahead.
Okay.
This is one theory, yeah. And I have other theories, maybe.
Okay.
Like, for instance, so you said there were 73 or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we need to get down to 70.
Well, I think there was more than that, actually. Hold on. The exact total was 73, which does not include the wives. It does include the daughters. But here's the thing: if you exclude the wives, but you still include the daughters because they're part of his household, and then you subtract Joseph and Joseph's 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, you get to 70.
Okay, so what's the problem?
I'm not saying there's a problem.
I'm saying there's a problem, and I'll tell you why. Because I think they probably included his wives.
Yeah, I mean,
but
that seems like the fair thing to do.
So you say 73, so we need to subtract 3 people.
I did.
No, I'm going to.
Oh, okay.
I think they kept the wives, but they subtracted other people. Like, for instance, Simeon. He was probably still in Egypt.
How do we know that? They released him from prison.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like he's just going to go home to return.
Well, it seemed like they probably all would.
Nah, not Simeon.
I
mean, after a year and a half, he probably made a life for himself there. So that's 72. So we only have to get rid of 2 more people, right?
Yeah, and Ephraim and Manasseh.
And maybe, fine. Well, then we did it.
And Joseph.
But
That's
then,
4. That's 69.
okay. Well, then let's just say Simeon left then.
That's what I'm saying. Simeon probably is part of Jacob's household. All you need to do is subtract Joseph and Joseph's 2 sons,
Right.
and you got 70.
Oh, so why are we talking about his wives?
Well, because you have to exclude Jacob's wives, or else you end up with 76 instead of 73 when you start.
Well, you should have said that from the beginning. His numbers are hard.
I know.
But I will say, I think that just means we have to exclude 6 people. And you already excluded 3, so we just need to exclude 3 more. Because, I assume his wives were included. Therefore, I'm just saying we have to exclude 3 more people, and one of them is Simeon.
Right. And the problem that we have, I think, is not that we can't find 3 people to exclude. It's obviously Joseph and his 2 sons, because they live in Egypt.
Yeah, but you said 76.
Right. And so then you have to exclude somebody else. Who would you exclude?
That's what I was saying.
The 3 wives.
Well, or 3 other people. Yes.
Well, who?
I was just telling you, Simeon is one of them. Maybe some child died and they're not telling us. And, maybe they didn't include Jacob because it's a given he'd be there.
Jacob's not included in his own household?
Well, it's his household, I would think. We continue now.
Sure.
All right.
I'm just saying, I think there's a path forward to get to 70.
Okay. Well,
you just have to kind of exclude some of the women.
I'm just saying, I bet there's another way to do it.
At least Dinah was included in the household numbering,
That's
they didn't
nice.
forget about her.
It's hard to forget about her.
Although
They would like to try.
There's only 2 women listed in that genealogy.
Okay.
Other than the mothers, obviously.
Who was the other? Who was the other one?
Well, unfortunately,
Uh-oh.
Dinah was listed,
Right.
and the only other daughter didn't have a name. She was so unimportant to the narrator that they wouldn't give her a name.
Well, hold on. Am I to believe that of all the children they had, only 2 of them were females?
I say nonsense to that. It's inconceivable that they only had 2 daughters out of all of those children.
Right. So why would they even include the other daughter who isn't Dinah, but not say her name?
I don't know. I couldn't figure that out. So the other daughter is a child of Asher. So Asher has a daughter, and she's listed in the narrative simply as their sister, referring to her brothers having a sister. That's it. That's all we got. We don't know anything else about her.
Listen, just a question. Is it possible that there were a lot more men born than women?
Do you think it's possible that they had 60-something sons and 2 daughters?
I'm asking you.
It's unlikely.
I don't know. I mean, back then you needed men, so maybe God changed the DNA for a little bit. You know what I mean?
I think it's more likely that they just didn't count most of the women because they were insignificant.
Mm-hmm. In the count of 70, you mean?
In the ancient context, they were just insignificant.
I mean, with our count of 70 people.
No, girls are property.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to tell you.
So we're counting 70 people, right?
Ish.
70 people. But to do that, you think there were daughters that were excluded from the count?
Or wives.
Well, whatever. Women. But for some reason, they still included Dinah and a nameless daughter in the count, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now we know why they included Dinah, because she had her own backstory, and so she was significant.
Yep.
What about the other one?
No idea.
Did Asher petition and say, listen, I love her, you don't have to name her, but she's in the Bible?
No idea.
Yeah.
I have no idea why Asher's daughter is listed in this genealogy.
Without a name.
It's. I can only assume that the readers of the narrative knew who she was. But that information, I think, is lost to history.
And they didn't know who Dinah was?
Well, they clearly knew who Dinah was.
Well, then you wouldn't have to name her.
Her story's in the narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. I got nothing.
Yeah. I'm just saying it's interesting the way that they've kind of sliced and diced the genealogy. The other thing that I noticed about the genealogies is the women who bore children.
Mm-hmm.
None of them, except for one, was listed as Jacob's wife? Guess which one?
I assume Rachel.
That's it. Isn't that interesting? Not even Leah. Leah gave birth to the majority of the children, and she's not even listed as a wife.
Where does it say that?
It's right in the text. Let's grab it real quick. In Genesis 47,
Because he did have 2 wives, and then also more,
2 wives and 2 concubines.
which were kind of like wives, right?
Yeah, I mean, basically.
Second-class wives.
Yeah, they are second-class wives. All right, let's see. Oh, sorry, I went to 47. We're supposed to be going to 46. I got ahead of myself. Got really excited for the next chapter.
I didn't want.
Yeah, okay, so in verse 15 it says these were the sons of Leah. So Leah is just listed as a woman. And then in 18, these were the sons of Zilpah. In 22, these were the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob. Oh, there we go. And if you go all the way down to 25, these were the sons of Bilhah, who Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob. All right, where's the part? I swear I read wife in here earlier. I'm not crazy.
Okay.
Okay, it's at the beginning 19. So it says the sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, were Joseph and Benjamin. And that's the only time a wife is mentioned anywhere in the chapter. I think it lends credence to our previous theories that Jacob was really attached to Rachel.
Yeah. So none of his sons' wives were.
Right.
Which is interesting because Rachel really did not play a huge role in anything, right?
They only had 2 kids.
Yeah.
They were important kids. Joseph and Benjamin, pretty important.
Well, yeah, but are they only important because they were Rachel's children?
Well, I don't know. Benjamin's important because they assimilate into Judah later in history.
Well, yeah, but I meant before they're important. That's the only reason they're important. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking Joseph concocted this whole plan. Would he have done that if Benjamin didn't exist?
I don't know if he would. I don't know if he would, actually.
All right. So it's a good thing he was around.
Yeah, it's interesting too that the sons born to Leah, they're not like exactly favored sons.
How's that?
Well, there's Reuben. Remember Reuben, the firstborn. He's characterized badly. He slept with his father's concubine.
Not that bad, but yeah.
So Reuben were not exactly great.
But he was he lost his allotment, right?
Lost his allotment.
Crazy.
But and then it even says that he had children by a Canaanite woman. Or Simeon says the sons of Simeon were so on and so forth. And it says the last son was Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. So the first 2 children born to Leah, not exactly painted in a good light. But then you've got Judah. Judah kind of saved the whole lot there from Leah. I think, did Levi come from there too? They also had Issachar and Zebulun. They got whooped up on by the Assyrians later. And then Dinah, the daughter that got raped. I tell you what, Leah's children are, other than even Judah, they're a basket case.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
Because they didn't have a loving who just looked at them and said, Rachel?
I don't know.
I'm sure they could feel the coldness.
What I do know is I did the numbers. I did the numbers on the children of Leah.
Huh?
Of Leah, because it said there were 33 of them. but my count is 35.
Okay.
However, if you remove the 2 grandchildren, then it is 33 again. So I think that's how you rectify that number.
No idea what you're talking about. So yeah, you did it. You found a problem and you solved it. Good job.
All right, so I think that's enough with the genealogies for the day, huh?
No kidding. I do not want to go into numbers ever,
I
or
know.
chronicles, or any of these.
I used to think the same way, but the more you read the Bible, the more the genealogies start to give you like some subliminal messages.
What are the messages?
Well, like here, it's basically how important some figures are and how unimportant others are. How completely unimportant the women seem to be. So should we read? I think we're on verse 28 now.
28 already?
Let me see. Yeah, verse 28.
28. All right. And he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out before him the way to Goshen, and they came to the land of Goshen. Is it weird that they didn't know how to get to Goshen and needed actual directions? What would even Joseph even say? He'd be like, so it's kind of south of here. If you hit Thebes, you've gone too far. Can't miss it. I looked that up to make sure that was the right city. Though it does bring up a good point where I don't know how they declared ownership over land back in the day. Can you imagine Joseph saying, yeah, go to the southern tip, and then like 20 years later they find out they're actually in the west or something? Or was there just always some random stranger waiting in the fields to direct people who are lost, a la the second visit to Shechem?
Right. Right.
There's a lot to take in there.
I thought about that for a second. I was like, how did they not know how to get to Goshen?
Yeah.
They already took 2 trips to Egypt. But my theory is this. My theory is that the narrative isn't very clear. And I suspect that they've arrived at Egypt. And then when they get to Egypt, then Judah goes slightly ahead to ask Joseph where Goshen is, rather than entering all the way into town and doing their whole caravan through town.
Mm-hmm.
They said, we're not going to lug 70, 80, 90, 100 people all through town to get to the palace.
Mm-hmm.
So they sent Judah ahead when they got to the outskirts of town. And then Judah was like, okay, give me the direction so we can go to our actual destination and not have to trouble ourselves going all the way into town and then back out of town.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that makes a lot more sense rather than suggesting that they were just lost and didn't know how to get to Egypt, because they knew how to get to Egypt. They just might not have known precisely where in Goshen they needed to go, like where specifically they needed to go.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
No.
It's like if I told you that, okay, you're going to visit, you and I are going to visit my aunt in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
You and I can get to Cleveland, but you can't get to my aunt's house because you don't know how to get there and you don't know where she lives.
Okay, but they were saying the whole land of Goshen, right?
Yeah, but they don't know where Goshen is.
Why not? They've been talking about it for chapters now.
Well, doesn't mean that they know anything about Egyptian geography.
To the south.
How far?
I don't know. How would they measure that?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think just getting to the land of Goshen necessarily was the problem. I think that the question is where is Goshen and what part of the land of Goshen should we be settling in?
So how did they figure that out?
Well, apparently Joseph told them through Judah. It says they sent Judah before them.
Yes, but how did Joseph know?
Well, Joseph knows everything. He's the highest in command.
Do they have a map to look on?
Joseph lives there.
In Goshen?
No, in Egypt.
Yeah, but he doesn't live in Goshen.
He's been there for like 20 years.
Goshen?
Egypt.
Yeah, but Goshen is not Egypt.
Goshen's a part of Egypt.
Yeah, a part of it, but it's not Egypt. It's way down south, right?
He knows where Goshen is. He's in charge of the entire land.
Is Goshen a city at this point?
Are you suggesting that like the mayor of Cleveland doesn't know where Beechwood is?
That's an interesting point.
You're in charge of all of Egypt. You know where Goshen is.
I guess, but you still don't have like, I don't know. I mean, do they figure it out by the stars or something? You know what I mean? Like, go south 20 miles. Okay. How do we know when we've done 20 miles?
I assume back in the day they had landmarks.
Okay.
A lot of people gave directions by landmarks. Go this direction until you see the bend in the river, and then go this direction until you see whatever the old weeping willow tree and whatever.
So back to my question: was Goshen a city at this point, or a settlement, or was it barren? Nobody lived there at the time.
Neither.
Huh?
Neither.
People were neither there nor not there.
It would have been like a rural farm community almost.
So okay, but there were some people.
Yeah, there were definitely some people.
Okay, do you think, and those were Egyptian citizens?
Yeah.
Okay. So they would have been all right with their land being taken from them?
No. We're going to get to that too, because it gets important here when we get towards the end of the narrative, what happens in Goshen.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think they would have been too pleased. But remember, it's not a huge number of people moving in at first. It's like 70 people.
Yeah.
Well, actually, maybe closer to like 150 once you include all the wives and daughters. But either way, it's not like let's say there's 5,000 people there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that big of a deal for a family of 100 or so to move in,
Mm. All right.
Anyways, yeah, let's read 33 and 34.
All right. So it shall be when Pharaoh calls you and says, "What is your occupation?" that you shall say, "Your servant's occupation has been with livestock from our youth even till now, both we and our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians." So Joseph wanted them to be relegated to Goshen on the outskirts. Like it was part of his plan. Reading the Message translation, the best translation there is.
Garbage.
It seems like Joseph wanted to stay away from, wanted them to stay away from Egypt. Actually, maybe if they had actually done that, instead of intermixing with Egypt so much, God wouldn't have been upset with them. I mean, he did tell the Israelites to set themselves apart, right? And it seems they did the complete opposite. So maybe God is like, well, since you like Egypt so much, why don't you all just become their slaves?
I think that getting them into Goshen was kind of setting them apart. It was settling them in a land which was already probably populated with shepherds that were like them, even if they were Egyptian shepherds, or perhaps they were even foreign shepherds. It was a land in which they would fit in.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, but they made the conscious decision to move upward to Upper Egypt, right?
Who?
The Israelites.
Well, we're still in Goshen.
I know, but later on.
I don't think so.
Well, then how do they become slaves?
You have to read the rest of the story.
Remember the Egyptians were like, there's too many Jews here.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me they're all just in Goshen, far away from Egypt, where nobody would even notice them? How would there be too many of them?
You would notice them.
Why?
It's not like they're never going to travel outside of Goshen.
Yeah, but not that. I mean, okay, they're going to come for food or to sell their wares or something.
Yeah, they're going to go to the market. Home. They're going to go look for wives. They're going to participate in some of the festivals. I mean, you're going to notice that they're there.
I guess. How long did it take to walk from Egypt to Goshen?
I don't really know.
Well, I guess.
Maybe a couple hours.
Well, so you wouldn't be doing that every day, right?
No, but it depends on what part of Goshen you're in. It's like asking how far does it take to go from Talmadge to Akron? Well, they're neighboring cities. If you live next to the border, it could be a 5-second walk.
All right, fine.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, Joseph definitely, I think, wanted them to be segregated from the rest of the Egyptians. As he already said, I think he knew the dangers of mixing them too heavily because all the shepherds were an abomination to the Egyptians, it says. I was trying to think about this scenario in my head though. You know what it reminded me of?
Ah.
You ever have a friend who like gets this really gets a girlfriend or a wife who's like from a really fancy family,
Okay.
and then when it's finally time for you to meet her, he's like acting all weird because he's like
Embarrassed of you?
a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Like he knows that you're from two socioeconomic backgrounds, and he's just trying to make it as smooth as possible, even though he knows that they probably look at you like you're, beneath them.
It's just, what if Joseph hadn't coached them on what to say to the Pharaoh? What would they have said?
I think probably the same thing would have happened. I think the Pharaoh would have asked him, how do you do and what do you do? And they would have given him the honest answer.
So why did they need to be coached?
I think Joseph was trying to make it a sure situation that they ended up in Goshen. He didn't want to risk or leave anything to chance that they could end up anywhere else.
Because maybe one of the brothers would have been like, well, I've been thinking about getting into banking.
Or maybe two of his brothers was thinking about slaughtering the entire town.
Oh, yeah.
Don't put Levi and Simeon in Egypt. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, last time we encountered a city, they killed everybody.
Right, yeah.
In fact, remember, this is a household of 70. But remember, this household must include all the women and children that they abducted from Shechem when they killed all the men.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So there's no way it's just 70 people.
Right.
Clearly is a reference to the sons and not to the entire clan.
Yeah.
There's no way there were...
And 2 daughters.
Yeah. I'm completely unconvinced that there was only 2, 3, 4, or 5 Shechemite women that they kidnapped and took with them and their children. It had to be 100 or more.
Okay. Yeah.
So it might be a big clan. Who knows?
I mean, it's the number 7. They like using that number, right?
Well, I think that's correct. Yeah, I think the number 70 was a theological number rather than a factual number.
So do you think they made it fit the number 70?
Yeah.
Which is why they had to include Dinah and the random daughter?
Yeah, I think so. I think they were just trying to get something as close to 70 as possible. Just like in the genealogy of Jesus in the book of Matthew, they specifically left some names out to do a pattern of 14, 7, 14, which in Hebrew gematria would have been a special name.
Weird. They're not complete genealogies. What you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. That's...
Yep.
Weird. All right. Are we done yet?
I think that's is there anything left in this chapter?
There isn't. I mean, nothing on these pages.
Yeah, I think that's the end of the chapter. And
you did want to mention, hey, why are you referring to the message still? But other than that...
Oh, yeah, I had a note in here, stop using the message. It's an abomination.
Uh-huh.
But let's click over to tab for 47.
All right.
And let's read 47. You don't need to stop this. It's all one stream.
All right. Well, I should say something. Hey, we're doing 47 now.
Well, it's just one video. But yeah, we're doing chapter 47. Will be our second and final chapter for the week. And
I mean, I'm looking at the time, and I guess you might be right.
Yeah, things are a little dicey.
Unless this chapter goes real quickly.
Do they ever go quickly with us?
This one might. Hardly anything there.
That's what you said last time.
Yeah,
and then we got to the genealogies.
Yeah, because there was something to talk about.
Wishful thinking.
There really wasn't.
There's a lot to talk about with genealogies.
Just kept talking, and I'm like, well, I guess I better ask questions.
I want to find you one of my favorite books on genealogies and make you read it.
Yeah. All right.
Chronicling Through Chronicles.
Yeah.
Isn't that a fun title?
Yeah, put it down.
It's a real nail biter. Keep on edge of your seat.
All right, let's do this chapter 47.
That's right.
So that we can eventually be done with Genesis. Then I can celebrate, knowing I only have 65 more books to go.
I got to be honest. I love the Book of Exodus. It's a wonderful read. Even if all you read was the episode with the plagues, I mean, it's riveting literature.
Well, we got to figure out how to do it faster than this.
All right.
Say that.
We'll do what we can.
All right. Because I'd like to read through the Bible before I die. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, if we go one chapter a week, we can at least get through the Torah before we die.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that's not important, but man, you know, it's going to take forever. All right.
Understand.
1 through 4. Then Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds, and all that they possess, have come from the land of Canaan, and they are in the land of Goshen. And he took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to the Pharaoh. Then the Pharaoh said to his brothers, What is your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, We have come to dwell in the land because your servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now, therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen. Wow. Wouldn't you know the thing we just read about in the last chapter is literally what we're reading about now?
Yeah, it's almost like it's a connected story.
Joseph told him to tell the Pharaoh something, and then they did.
Right.
So that's that was it. There was more, but we already answered. I guess we got ahead of ourselves on the last one. Yeah.
Yeah, we did. I had a question though.
Okay.
Why 5 brothers?
Well,
Does Pharaoh not know that he's got 11 brothers? And how do you, which 5 did he pick, and why did you think he picked them? You think maybe some of his brothers were just like less presentable than the others, or like everyone's got like a sibling or multiple siblings where like, well, these aren't really, this is not our putting our best foot forward. Let's make sure and get the other ones.
Well, probably. I mean, you're gonna pick what, like Benjamin, Judah, maybe Simeon, because he's probably been living the good life, I bet.
Well, yeah, well, he might already know Pharaoh. He was in prison for a year and a half.
So they might have this rapport.
Yeah, right? he might have some prison rapport, yeah.
And then 2 others.
Okay.
Who we don't know.
I would imagine Benjamin's up in there.
Yeah.
Benjamin, Simeon, and
Judah, right?
Definitely Judah, because he's like the, and definitely not Reuben. He's a loose cannon. He could,
right? Yeah,
he could rape somebody's mother. You never know with him.
Yeah, but he did try to like save Joseph, right?
I know he did stick his neck out.
So it's possible he might be in there, just like in the back. You know
who it's not? Issachar, Zebulun, Naphtali, Asher. None of those goons. You don't hear about them ever. Like
right.
The narrator is not concerned with those people at all in Genesis.
That's true.
They have no role to play.
It is kind of odd because it's 12 brothers, and yet you only hear about like 5 of them.
Right. And Dan is a huge clan leader in the Bible. They only gave him one son. His one son, but somehow he turns into like thousands and thousands of offspring. He married well? Apparently, his son did, because
must have been a machine. Had a lot of orange juice,
right? And then whereas some of the 12 tribes, I forget, one of them had like 6 or 7 sons, and tribe didn't grow nearly as big as the tribe of Dan. It's just really interesting how family dynamics work. You never know. You just never know if your family's going to have large tentacles down the road or narrow.
I wouldn't say tentacles. I'd say branches.
Branches are good.
3 tentacle. That's weird.
Yeah.
So it says here, your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. So don't they just have the one father?
Yeah.
Is that,
Wait, how do they have multiple fathers? What? That can't be right.
You think it's just a typo, or?
That's a weird one.
Okay. Did you not catch that?
I didn't pick up on that.
Okay.
I'm actually sad I didn't notice that. Oh my gosh. I'll have to look into that one.
Right.
That's a new one for me. Highlight that word for me real quick. Just give it like a yellow highlight, and then what in the world are you doing?
Just highlighting.
That's a format painter.
Oh,
You know how like word processors work, don't you?
I'm working on it.
You've been using like, you're gonna break it. Let me just.
This is just the go to Google Docs, right?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm doing it so terribly.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I assume you learn how to use word processors.
I've never seen a paint roller.
You've
before.
written like 3 books.
Yeah, just have to publish them. All right. I've never seen a paint roller before. All right.
That's the format painter. It's on Microsoft Word too.
I have no idea. Let's just go.
You've never used the format painter?
I have no idea what it is.
It's literally my favorite tool.
What is it?
It's a format painter.
Okay.
You can copy and paste a format from one thing to another.
Okay. I don't know what a format is. Let's continue.
It's like when you make your text bold or you make it blue or red or you change your font type.
Okay.
That's a format. You can copy that format and paste it on top of something else. See?
Oh, whoa.
You never knew that existed?
That's pretty neat.
I know. It's the best tool in the whole kit.
Well, that's fun. All right. I'll have to try that out later.
Yeah, you're going to fall in love with the format painter.
I am. My wife will be so jealous.
All right, let's read verses 4 through 5.
All right.
We'll play with format painters after this.
All right. Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, "Your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land. Let them dwell in the land of Goshen, and if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock." Isn't it interesting that Pharaoh doesn't really...
That's my text.
What? Why is it above mine then?
Because I wanted to go first. Just for that one. See, I always make my... You can read my note if you want.
I didn't even realize it wasn't mine. I'm like, oh, this is...
You can read it.
Okay.
You can make it yours.
No, go ahead.
Isn't it interesting that Pharaoh isn't really aware of what's happening down in Goshen? Why would he randomly just make Joseph's brothers the leader over the herdsmen?
Mm.
Isn't that... I understand that you like Joseph. I understand that you trust Joseph. But it's odd to me that it was like, hey, these brothers that I've never met,
Right.
just make them leader over all of my already existing herdsmen.
To be fair, he did say, hey, if any of them are competent, but if
True.
they're not, eh.
He's kind of leaving it into Joseph's hands. But it reminded me, in Genesis, it seems like there's always this bend towards propping people up merely because they're related to somebody else who's special.
Mm.
For example, Lot's family, not great people.
Right.
They were only saved because they were Lot's family. Lot was technically only saved because he was the nephew of Abraham.
Right.
Noah's kids, at least one of them was a complete delinquent, only saved because of Noah.
Yeah.
His kids are never listed as righteous.
Mm-hmm.
Only Noah. So, like, there's this weird thing that happens in Genesis all the time where, like, well, you're the brother or the nephew or the son of somebody really awesome, and therefore that means you must be awesome. And I'm curious to know in the ancient mind if that just made sense to them. Like, is being good and smart and, like, righteous and whatnot, is that a family trait?
Well, it is. I mean, we know that because that's why Abraham's progeny were supposed to be so in such high esteem. I don't know.
Right.
You know how
I agree
we
with you.
mentioned early on that these traits were passed down for some reason, which made no sense nowadays, but without knowing, DNA and what have you, they just guessed.
I think in the ancient world, the sure bet that you would get the right people on the job is if you could ensure that they came from a good family.
I mean, to be fair, that's still good advice.
I think it is.
I mean, good parents are likely going to raise good children.
Yep.
I mean, not always, but
right.
Yeah.
And we do it at work. We have a lot of nepotism in my industry.
Mm.
We see a lot of engineers where I work at, where their children, when they go to college, they're interning with us.
Mm.
And to be quite honest, we have a very high success rate with children of existing employees in our company.
Mm.
And they behave very well. There's one right now in our department who's a nephew of somebody who's been in our mechanical engineering department for like 25 years. And he's a phenomenal intern, one of the best we've ever had.
Mm.
So maybe you're right. There's something to say, like, listen, if you can identify a family with good leadership, you're more likely to increase your chances that there are, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? Not a guarantee, of course.
No, we've certainly seen that.
Right.
No, I was just thinking about what
Oh,
but to be fair, that was Jacob's kid, right? No, that was
Judah's.
Isaac. Judah's. Oh, third try. But to be very fair, Judah wasn't the best parent. But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you can't tell.
Yeah, and Judah did sleep with his daughter-in-law, which is
right. So I mean, then again, maybe we should have expected it from his children.
Yeah.
Anywho,
I'm seriously very convinced that Judah knew he was sleeping with his daughter-in-law. I know we talked about it before, but we're not going to do it again.
Right.
But like, there's no way he didn't recognize his daughter-in-law. Come on.
Yeah.
Oh well. So yeah, what was your notes on this?
Isn't it interesting that Pharaoh is? Oh wait, that's yours.
You really want to read my note?
All right, I love this. So the Egyptians hate these abominable shepherds, but since they're there anyhow, they could help the Pharaoh with his own livestock. Another thing, were there already Egyptians settled in Goshen? I mean, apparently it's the best land in all of Egypt, or maybe the worst. I don't know. I also have to wonder how the other Egyptians felt about giving away their best land to these dirty shepherds.
Yeah. My assumption, having not looked at the archaeological record, but just by going by the narrative of Genesis, my assumption is that it's at least sparsely populated by already existing shepherds, right? Because who else is Joseph going to set in power over there, over the shepherds, if there's no shepherds already existing?
So there's got to be at least some sort of a class structure, right?
Yeah, my assumption is that the land of Goshen was probably roughly comparable to what they had back home, and was the most fitting for a family of shepherds. If that makes sense, right?
Yeah. So the Egyptians didn't like what the Jews did, like with like animal skins and what have you. Now these other shepherds that were in Goshen, did they have similar practices to the Jewish shepherds?
I wouldn't think so. No, they would have been herding the animals, but the way they did ritual sacrifices, their diet that they ate would have been a little bit different. The types of animals that they would use for sacrifices or for food would have been different. Although, to be fair, the Egyptians didn't do animal sacrifices to the extent that they did in Canaan. That wasn't like a main feature of their religion. It was a feature of some of their religion, but not as big as it was up north.
Well, that's because God made it a big feature, right?
Yeah. Well, kind of. It was big in Phoenicia and in the land of Hatti and Syria and Mesopotamia.
Well, God was big on everybody being sinners and needing to wash their sins away in the blood of animals, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
Bam.
Yeah. But anyways,
so what would the different animals be then?
I actually don't recall, but I do know that like they didn't sacrifice bulls. That was one of the things.
Okay.
Whereas that was one of the main sacrifices in ancient Canaan and
Boy,
whatnot.
I bet that was a bit of a bone of contention there, huh?
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
If it's important next week, I can round up some sources.
Certainly is not.
Okay.
But so the Egyptian shepherds, they did not wear animal skins then.
Mm,
They were probably like, dude, these guys are gross.
yeah.
And now I have to
Especially,
take orders from them.
yeah, like if especially think about the old days when you didn't really wash your clothing all that much, and it's really difficult to wash animal skin clothing to begin with.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh.
You can't just get leather wet. Like there's a whole procedure for it. The fact of the matter is they probably had a particular odor.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? Like it didn't smell great.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's gross. All right.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, we can make leather pretty good now, and it's not gross or anything. I doubt they were just skinning an animal and saying, all right, I have a new shirt. Right.
Well, they weren't really wearing shirts. They're typically like skirts. You know, 'cause they didn't really wear pants. They wore like knee length skirts and
Because
whatnot.
it was so hot?
Yeah.
Is that why?
Yeah.
Huh. I mean, I bet the Pharaoh was always hot then.
And you think so? The clothing in ancient Egypt was more breathable, though. One of the reasons why they didn't use animal skin for clothing, because it was so hot down there, you'd burn up.
Okay, then why did the Jews?
Because they had a more diverse climate.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Because Canaan is not that far from Egypt.
Well, if you're down in the Negev desert, yeah, it can get really hot. But if you're in northern Canaan, it's a whole different story.
Is that right?
Yeah. Especially if we get close to Phoenicia and Lebanon.
It was that big of a land that there was a difference in weather?
Yeah, you can get snow in northern Canaan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh. I just assumed this was all like 105-degree weather at all times.
No. They had some diversity of climate.
Oh. Okay. I guess animal skins keep you warm better than cloth.
Very versatile.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
7-8.
Yeah.
Then Joseph brought in his father Jacob and set him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, how old are you? Or in my head, Pharaoh's like, dude, how are you even still alive? You look just awful, man. Go lay down or something.
Yeah. I was trying to picture this in my head as well. Because like he died at 147.
Okay.
At this particular stage, he's not far off from that. I did a timeline.
Okay.
I think he's 130 right now. Well, He's 130.
Well, that's still 17 years.
He's got 17 years left, but somebody's 130 years old.
Yeah.
That's a fair question to ask. How old are you? You know what you mean? Like, it might not be something you see every day.
Mm.
Although, his parents and his parents' parents lived really long lives.
Here's a question. How long did the Egyptians live?
Well, as far as we can tell, they lived normal lives, just like humans today, except they had more disease and war and things like that.
No. So, I mean, was 150 or 130, was that a lot for
They'd be like double or triple.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. So how did he live so much longer than the Egyptians?
Well, I think that's part of the biblical narrative. I think, according to the Bible, it was because people back then could just live longer.
They just could.
Yeah.
But not the Egyptians. They decided not to.
Like Abimelech. Abimelech
yeah.
was well into his hundreds. Yeah.
Yeah. Since we saw him twice.
Almost 3 times. Sorry. Yeah. But, but the Bible never says anything about the age of the Egyptians, but we know from history that the Egyptians lived roughly comparable timelines like we would today.
Well, which means all the more reason why this looks like it would be true for the Pharaoh to actually say, hey, how did you get to be so old?
Right.
Which is to say that it kind of corroborates the story in the Bible that the Jews were older.
Oh, it certainly could, yeah. I'm not suggesting he wasn't 130.
Okay.
I'm just suggesting that I don't think it would have been normal for the Egyptians to live to 130. And if they met somebody that was 130, they might be like, holy crap, how old are you?
And because they lived to what, 70, 80?
Yeah, I mean, if they're lucky. And there's more to that. When we read verses 9 and 10, we'll talk a little bit more about the ages, because it gets really interesting when we start talking about the ages of people.
All right, cool.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think he saw this dude. He looked like he was 1,000,000 years old, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, how old are you? You made this journey all the way from Hebron, and you look like you could barely make it."
Right.
You know,
Because he was probably in one of the carts.
He was in a cart. That's what it says. Yeah, according to the narrative.
Yep.
Let's read 9 and 10.
No, you have a funny thing to say.
Oh, I did. It says, also, how welcome or unwelcome do we think Jacob's blessing was to Pharaoh? Do you think that Pharaoh was like, yeah, let's just let the old timer do his thing? Because Pharaoh doesn't believe in,
Yeah.
most likely doesn't believe in Jacob's God.
I mean, he probably believes more than most Egyptians, right? Since he's seen firsthand all that Joseph has been able to do.
Yeah.
But I still think, I mean, was that just a thing that people did? They just blessed people randomly, or?
It was. And the Egyptians were welcoming of other gods. They weren't exclusionary god worshippers. In fact, Egypt often was referred to as the land of the gods, because they had so many of them. So he wouldn't be like offended that somebody with another god wanted to bless him. That's not a problem at all. But I picture it in my mind, and I can only assume he was like, whatever Jacob wanted to do, he was just going to let the old timer do it just to humor him.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But as a pharaoh, you don't really need to humor anybody, right?
No, but we kind of get the impression Pharaoh's a good guy here, don't we?
I mean, he has to, and I'll tell you why. Because otherwise, I don't think Jacob should be blessing us, on the assumption that his blessing actually carries any weight whatsoever.
Right. Do we believe that Pharaoh is a believer that the blessing means anything? I don't know. He might and he might not. It just depends, because some of the Egyptians were very ready to adopt everybody's gods, and some of them not so much.
But I'm just saying, if Jacob actually had the power to bless people, and he blessed Pharaoh even though he was a terrible person, then I think we would have a problem.
Oh, I don't know. I think anytime someone did something kind for you, you might utter a blessing for them.
Or when they sneeze.
Yeah. Yeah, I think blessings were pretty ubiquitous during this time period. It was quite often, it could have just been a gesture of goodwill.
So Jacob might have just been like, thanks.
You mean Pharaoh?
No.
Wait, what?
Thanks for giving us this land.
Oh, yeah. Was Jacob using the blessing as a gift of thanks?
And the blessing was just 2 thumbs up.
Oh, I don't know if it was that, trivial, but
informal.
Yeah, but yeah, I think a lot of it was, with the blessing was his way of thanking Pharaoh for his kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. That's the way I read it, at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 9, 10.
Mm-hmm.
And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. That made sense. So Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. Poor Jacob, I guess. I mean, let's see. He had to flee his family when his awful mother convinced him to betray his own brother. He spent, 20-ish years trying to get his wife, who then dies, while that ugly hag, Leah, continues to hang on. Beautiful personality. He loses the only son he ever actually loved for 22 years until he returns. Oh, and one of his daughters gets defiled.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Actually, maybe that is sad.
Humbled.
Yeah. I guess that's true, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he seemed kind of, cocky at the beginning, right? Remember when he was trying to impress Rachel? He took that
lifted that whole stone by himself, right, uncovered the well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to talk about that next.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's going to get real interesting.
Oh, well, then good for me for doing that. Means I knew what I was talking about. All right. Oops.
So, to your point, he seems a little disappointed with his life so far,
Yeah, which is weird,
but dude's got a big old family, lots of money, and he's being rescued in the middle of the famine. He's living a long life, but it seems like he's disappointed because he doesn't get to live as long as some of his forefathers did for 300 years or more than that.
You and evil have been the days of the years of my life.
Right.
So he didn't live that long, and it was all terrible.
And gotta be honest, if he's already 130. If you're living for 100, how many people do you know anywhere near 100 who's like, I want to live for another 47 years?
Right.
Everyone I've known close to 100 is like, any day now.
Yeah.
Let's get the show on the road. So it's interesting here that he seems a little bit. He feels like he's been snubbed. But
which is ridiculous.
I think you're right about the number of bad things that happened to him. He's had some pretty terrible things happen to you, but when you're alive again for 130 years, that's a lot of time,
right,
for some bad things to happen. Think about the tragedies that happened in the USA just over the last 100 years. I mean, nobody can escape tragedy. Also, it happens to be true that Jacob was 91 when Joseph was born. And he was 77. I did the math. He was 77 when he started working for Laban.
Really?
Yeah. Think back when we read the story of Jacob and Esau, and then Jacob runs away to Laban. Remember how we were discussing that it kind of seems like the story reads kind of like they might still be teenagers, but they're probably older,
right,
a little bit older than that.
Yeah.
Because their father is sick and on his deathbed. And the long and short of it was, when Jacob left the house to escape his brother, he was 77.
Do we know this?
Yes.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So, say nowadays we live to be about 77. He lived double that. Does that mean that maybe he would have had the mental capacity of, say, like a 35-year-old?
Well, he would technically have the physical appearance
of a 35-year-old,
of a 50-year-old.
Well, of a 35-year-old, because that's...
Well, what's half of 147?
I don't know, like...
About 75.
Right, yeah. Right. And what's half of 75?
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. But most people live past 75, I think.
I'm just trying to...
Yeah, he's roughly the appearance of a mature adult male.
So I doubt he looks like a 70-year-old nowadays, right?
Yeah, but I mean, we're assuming in this hypothetical that he's aging slower.
Right.
Like his teeth weren't somehow missing at 77.
I think that's a given. Otherwise, this cannot work at all.
Right.
Because it seems like much of your body does give out, and he'd probably be praying for death at 130.
That's
right?
my thought. I mean, does the dude have any teeth left?
No teeth, no bone density.
Yeah, right.
No muscles. He's just that's it,
But think about this, okay? Okay. He was 77 when he went to Laban.
Mm-hmm.
He worked for 7 years before he got the wrong wife.
Right.
Okay. So that means he was 84 when he married Leah, or he accidentally married Leah.
Uh-huh.
And then he was 81 when he married Rachel.
91?
91, yeah. 91 when he married Rachel.
Is that true?
No.
I thought that after the 7 years, he gave, Laban gave Jacob Leah, and then Jacob complained, and he gave him Rachel as well, but he still stayed for another 7.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. He complained. He gave him both of them, but then he had to work after for another 7 years.
Yeah,
to pay for it. You're right. So he would have got both of the women at age 84.
Okay.
That makes more sense because According to my math, Joseph was born when he was 91.
Okay.
Isn't that interesting?
Mm-hmm.
91. Because when you read through the narrative of Genesis, when you read through the Jacob and Esau story,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of reads like they're kind of young and stupid still.
Right.
Like it's just the age-old story of two young, dumb brothers, and then they grow up and they patch things up, and
Oh yeah.
But that wasn't the case.
Oh.
Dude was 77.
I just have trouble seeing. I mean, I just feel like if you live double our age, you probably mature half as quickly. I don't know if that's true, but I just think that's it.
See, I think your body would,
Not
but your
mind?
brain can't, because part of maturity is through life experiences, and that comes just as you age, right?
Yeah. That would be weird for his really old mother to do that.
Yeah. Now, what I haven't done yet is I haven't gone back, now that I know the ages of Jacob and Joseph, I haven't gone back and done the timeline with Isaac and Rebecca, but that I'm going to try to do that this week.
Okay.
And see if I can determine like how old they were when they got married and how old they would have been like when the boys were born, when the twins were born. Try to put a whole timeline together for future reference.
Do we know how old Rachel was when she died?
Yes, her age is given at death, but I forget what it is. It's like 130 or 125 or something like that.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you think Rachel's age was similar to Jacob's?
Oh, Rachel? I'm sorry. I was thinking Rebecca. I don't recall what Rachel's age was.
Okay, but I mean, she had to be a lot younger, right?
We can just Google. Let me Google how old Rachel was.
All right, I'll wait here.
It took me a second to catch up. I think I see what you're asking now. How old was Rachel when she died in Genesis? Because I don't remember if her age was given. But if we can determine what age she died, we can definitely determine what age she was when she got married.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's in here. Let's see. Rachel and Leah were twins. It says, according to, this is not true, but according to the some Jewish rabbis, says they were twins and married at the age of 22. I find that doubtful. If it's not actually written in the Bible, I'm not inclined to believe it.
Would somebody think that? I mean, not identical, but still.
The Jewish rabbis over the course of the centuries have came up with lots and lots of theories to kind of fill in the gaps.
Mm-hmm.
It's according to one rabbinic source in Olam Rabbah 2, it says Rachel died at the age of 36. But I find that doubtful. I don't think that's true. But I feel like the answer would have been pretty readily available on the internet if it was actually in the Bible. I wouldn't have to be googling this long.
Yeah.
So I'm inclined to believe right now that their ages weren't given.
Okay.
Yeah. But when you think about it, what age were women typically married off in those years?
Young.
Right?
Like what, 16? Something?
Probably.
It's hard to believe that Jacob really loved her that much then. You know what I mean, right?
I think the idea that they were possibly anywhere between 16 and 25 and married someone who was 77,
right?
It makes the story read very strange.
It does. But it has to be that way because she had to be able to give birth to children. And I mean,
You only
women,
get so much time.
right? I mean, after what, like 33 or something.
Yeah.
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 So.
Although think about this. Laban was the brother of Rebecca,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
If Rebecca and Laban are roughly comparable in age, which we don't know if they are, but if that's true,
Yeah.
then the age of Laban's children could be roughly comparable to the ages of Rebecca's children. We don't know if any of that's true, but it
Yeah.
is a working hypothesis.
Uh-huh.
But I just find it less likely that that Rachel and Leah were also in their 60s or 70s. They would have been married by then.
And how would they have children?
That's what I'm saying. They would have been married by then.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, how would they have had children if they were that old?
Well,
as well.
Sarah did at like 90 something.
Okay, but we're not told this is miraculous.
I know, that's true.
And if it is, that's a miracle for both Leah and Rachel.
Well, one of them couldn't have children. She was barren, and then finally the Lord blessed her, much like the rest of the women in the Bible that had miraculous birth.
Okay, that's true. That's true.
Here's the other thing, though. The maidservants, the Zilpah and Bilhah, they're probably young too. All I'm saying, we don't really know for sure, but it seems to me that the 77-year-old dude hitched himself to some teenage girls, not just one or two, but to four of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane.
Right.
Anyways, but what are you gonna do? That's what the book says.
Yeah. Did we continue?
Yep. I'll work on the timeline later this week and see if I can find anything else.
I believe it's almost 9.
I told you we ain't got time for 3 chapters. Yeah. We're barely gonna make it through 1 chapter or 2 chapters.
I know. I just, I feel like I can just ask any question.
I know. Yeah.
And there are a lot of stupid questions in my head.
There's a lot of questions all the time in both of our heads. All right, verses
11 to 12?
11 and 12. Yeah, Genesis 47, 11 to 12.
And Joseph situated his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Then Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with bread, according to the number in their families. I have nothing to say, but you have a book to say.
Yeah. It might be tempting to gloss over the name of the Pharaoh, especially because people recognize the name Ramses as a popular name. But it's kind of important to figure out who we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. Ramses the First only reigned for 2 years.
2 years?
Not likely Ramses number 1.
Okay, so this is not that guy.
I don't think so.
2 years.
There's a Ramses number 2 who came shortly after.
Why would you name yourself Ramses II if the first guy only reigned for 2 years? That's a bad omen. Well, keep going.
Family name,
Oh, yeah.
Ramses the Junior.
Oh, you think so?
It's a family name, yeah.
Oh.
Ramses II reigned for much longer. He reigned for something like 60 years, 50 or 60 years in Egypt. And this is probably the Pharaoh that we read about in the book of Genesis, because we don't read anywhere that there's a change of Pharaoh during the whole Joseph narrative, and he was there for 22 years.
You say when he reigned, is that, so what, 1279 to 1213?
Yeah.
Is that near the time we think that the Joseph narrative took place?
No.
Oh.
That's part of the problem we're trying to get to.
Okay.
So the dating is a little bit of a problem, because Ramses II, who reigned a long enough time period that it could have covered all the Joseph narrative.
And we know this.
Yeah, we
sure,
know,
because it's got to be written down. He's a
very
pharaoh.
well documented. Yeah.
Okay.
Very well documented. We know for sure that Ramses reigned from 1279 to 1213 BCE.
Okay.
But the problem that we have is, remember that they were in Egypt for 430 years.
Yeah.
If that's true, that would put the Exodus at like the 8th century, which is 200 years after King David already lived. So the timeline here is not good.
Okay, yeah.
Ramses is obviously an anachronistic name. It could not have been Ramses. It had to have been somebody else. But
Okay.
my guess is Ramses was so well known, and Merneptah, who came after him, were so well known for building up storehouses and dealing with famines
Okay.
that their names just got associated with the story. Even today, we have lots of archaeological evidence to demonstrate that these two pharaohs dealt very widely with building up storehouses and helping not their people but other countries deal with the grain shortage and the famines of the time period. So
You said Merneptah?
Merneptah?
Merneptah.
Yeah.
Looks like
Yeah. So the interesting thing though is Merneptah.
Yeah.
Now this is another reason why we're pretty sure that the Exodus probably happened in the middle of like the 1300s or 1400s.
Yeah.
Because Merneptah even talks about going to war against the Israelites. He says that the seed of Israel is no more. It's in one of the Merneptah's war steles. So all that to say is the Exodus obviously had to have happened somewhere in the 15th or 14th century, and attributing Ramses as the pharaoh here in Genesis is incorrect. They got the wrong pharaoh.
Well, so they're not attributing it to Ramses the second, but to his son.
No.
It says there the son of Ramses the second.
Who? Merneptah?
Yeah,
Yeah, Merneptah is the son of Ramses II.
that's what I said.
Yeah, but I'm saying Merneptah, when he recorded in history that he went to war against the Israelites.
Right, so he was probably the pharaoh we're talking about right now.
No.
And I missed what you were saying.
I'm saying the Exodus could not have happened according to the timeline given in Genesis. According to the timeline in Genesis, the Exodus would have happened in the 8th century.
Right.
But we know that the Israelites had already left Egypt and had already become a people group.
According to the Bible or history?
According to the Bible and history.
Oh, really?
Just not Genesis. Okay. So according to history and according to the rest of the Bible, the Exodus is likely in the middle of the 1400s.
Yeah.
And this actually lines up with history because we know from Merneptah that the people of Israel were called the Israelites already. They were a clan, a large enough people group that they were able to go to war against the Egyptians. And the Merneptah stele records that war and claims that they basically beat up the Israelites. Now, that happened apparently in the 1200s, which means it's more likely that the Exodus happened 100, 200, even 300 years prior, giving them enough time to actually become a people group in the land of Canaan that they could even go to war against.
Okay.
Genesis got the chronology wrong, is what I'm saying.
So Merneptah was the pharaoh who had to deal with all the plagues.
Well, that's the thing. Is according to the Bible, I don't think it gives us the name of the pharaoh.
I know, but you're saying that's what probably most likely.
According to history?
No. Yes.
No, according to history, the pharaoh that got the plagues was like 300 years before Merneptah.
Okay. Why does this stuff not fit together?
Because Genesis got it wrong?
Yeah, but all of these different details are from different time periods. You can't squish them together.
Right.
So I don't know what happened.
That's what I'm saying. If you read the rest of the Bible
Yeah.
and compare it to history, it matches. Just not Genesis.
Is that right?
Genesis screwed the pooch. But if you read the rest of the Bible, you can use the lineages and the dates and whatnot given in the Bible, and you can come up with an Exodus date of about 1400 something. And that does seem to correlate with what we find in history. There was a mass exodus of Semitic-speaking people around that time period that left Egypt and went into Canaan. And we have other data suggesting that the land of Canaan was under attack during that time period by outsiders named the Habiru.
And this is talked about in Exodus. It's just Genesis that got it wrong? Or does Exodus have some of this?
No, it shows up in other parts of the Bible, not just Exodus. Like the Exodus happens.
Well, you said Genesis got it wrong.
Yeah, it did.
I'm asking if
Yeah.
Exodus also got it.
Not so much.
So it really is just Genesis.
Yeah, Genesis is kind of screwed up here. They picked the name of the pharaoh they thought it was, and it's not the right pharaoh.
Oh.
They got the wrong pharaoh.
Which happens.
Yeah, it happens. You got to remember, this was written many hundreds of years after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? What are the odds they're going to remember the right name of the pharaoh?
Yeah.
They might remember the most famous of the pharaohs, who was, in their memory, was closely related to dealing with famines, which was Ramses. And both he and his son were. In fact, in the Hittite corpus, there's a letter from the first year of Merneptah, where the Hittites record Merneptah sending ships of grain up to the land of the Hittites in order to sustain them during a famine. So during the reigns of Ramses and Merneptah, like grain storage and famines were kind of a big deal. I suspect that's just that the memory of those two pharaohs got ingrained in people's memories.
Well, because I mean, so this happened in, you say, the 1400s or so?
Yeah, Joseph, yeah, most likely was.
And when was this written?
Well, Joseph was probably in the land of Egypt, like closer to the 17 or 1800s.
No, I mean the Exodus.
The Exodus was probably about the 1400s.
Right. When was this written?
Oh, probably the 800s.
Okay, so that's a lot of time for them to get it wrong.
It'd be like you and I writing a narrative about something that happened in the medieval period.
Mm-hmm.
What are the odds we're going to get something wrong about the medieval period?
Probably a lot.
Yeah,
especially
right?
if we didn't have history of it, right?
Yeah. Was it
We're
King George
writing
the Third or the Second or the Fifth? I don't know. You know, we're going to get the wrong one eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Somebody just got the wrong pharaoh.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
And it's a pretty good wrong pharaoh to have.
I'd say so.
Does it make sense for them to get it wrong?
Yeah. And he was a very well-known pharaoh. He reigned for 60 years or so. I mean, he was a big deal.
I only know two pharaohs.
Right. It's like
Nebuchadnezzar.
If you ask somebody who doesn't know anything about American history, ask them to name a president. Who are they going to name?
Washington.
That's right. Everyone knows George Washington. Yeah. Right. So they just named the most famous pharaoh that they knew.
Yeah. That
seemed to fit the mold, and they went with it. No one called them out on it because who's going to call them out on it?
Yeah.
This is 800 years after the fact. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the Bible seems to line up pretty well with what we have in history and archaeology. Cool. Just not the naming of the pharaoh. The naming of the pharaoh is spurious. It's not accurate.
Yeah, but you can see why they would have made a mistake. So I'm all right with that.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's an honest mistake anyone could have made.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It wouldn't have bothered me at all. Because I mean I was never like a super big on like inerrancy,
right? Yeah,
because it's a human endeavor that God trusted humanity with.
And I mean Genesis already is,
Genesis is more mythology than anything else.
Yeah,
right. All right, let's read 13 through 15, huh?
We gotta hurry.
Yeah.
All right. The time eventually came when there was no food anywhere. The famine was really bad. Egypts and Canaan alike were devastated by the famine. Joseph collected all the money that was to be found in Egypt and Canaan to pay for the distribution of food. He banked the money in Pharaoh's palace. When the money from Egypt and Canaan had run out, the Egyptians came to Joseph. Food! Give us food! Are you going to watch us die right in front of you? The money is all gone. So Joseph Joseph got a bunch of money from the citizens and then sold them the grain back to them. Then he just shoved all that money in the Pharaoh's coffers. Do you think at this point the Pharaoh is thinking, maybe I was wrong to entrust this random guy with all my power? It almost seems like it was a smart idea the Pharaoh had. If Joseph succeeded, then the Pharaoh looks good for picking him. If he fails, then everyone blames Joseph instead, which seems like what they're doing right now, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Still, it seems like it would make Pharaoh weaker in everyone's eyes. So,
I think this part of the narrative is a little bit hyperbolic, and I think when we read the rest of the chapter, it's going to be
like a chamber.
Not quite.
Oh,
I think they're exaggerating when they tell this part of the narrative.
Okay.
And that becomes obvious as we read the rest of the chapter. I don't believe that it was as severe as it reads. And when we go to the next verse, we'll see that. But it is, to your point, it seems like a little bit of a double-edged sword to save your citizenry while also, impoverishing them.
Yeah.
Right? And I was thinking about that and said, that doesn't seem smart to me.
It's even worse.
It gets even worse, but actually, if you keep reading the whole chapter, it gets better at the end. It makes much more sense when you get to the end of the chapter.
In a way, it does.
Yeah, so let's read 16 through 17, because as silly as it starts to get here,
Mm-hmm.
I think when you finally get to the end, it makes more sense.
Disagree. All right. Then Joseph said, "Give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock if the money is gone, since I have it all in the bank of Pharaoh." I just added that. He's like...
You just turned it into the Message translation?
He's like, if the money's all gone, but it's like, it's right behind him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, it's kind of a jerk move. You ask me.
I know.
That's all I'm saying. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the cattle of the herds, and for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with... It's very quiet. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. This sounds pretty short-sighted, considering I imagine their livestock were producing food or goods to sell. Instead of trading their livestock for bread, they could have just eaten it. Surely there's got to be more calories in livestock than meat. And again, the money isn't all gone. It's just in the...
Right.
Easily be like, okay, they're suffering. Let's give them back a little of their money. But he's like, nah, let's just take more and more from them so that they become our slaves.
It's a little difficult to understand why Pharaoh would allow this type of behavior, because it seems like it would lead to some sort of a social and economic collapse of the country.
Yeah.
It seems like it's just bad economic policy. And besides that, who's taking care of all the livestock? Where is it all going? Where are they storing it? Somebody has to take care and feed these animals anyways.
I got an idea.
And aren't they supposed to be outside of town?
They're probably rehiring everybody to take care of the same animals, but instead they're not theirs this time, which is shady.
All of these questions get answered if you just read to the end of the chapter.
Are you telling me to shut up? All right.
Yeah, let's keep reading. Let's do 19. The livestock situation, it's resolved. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yep.
Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants of Pharaoh. Give us seed, that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolate. Oh, I get it now. Everybody living there was just an idiot. This makes a lot more sense now. So they would rather live as slaves than die as landowners. I still think it's kind of a mean thing of Joseph to take the land, especially considering he did have food to give them. Didn't the Pharaoh already own the land anyhow? He's the Pharaoh. He can requisition anything he wants. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's all I got.
When you're part human, part God, as the Pharaoh was,
yeah,
you can annex any land you want. You don't need an excuse for it.
Right.
But I'm assuming here still yet that this is kind of a literary rhetorical device attempting to emphasize how severe the famine was. I don't actually believe that all of the Egyptians sold themselves as slaves to Pharaoh.
Okay.
And I think that my claim is validated in the very next two verses.
All right, we'll keep reading then.
Yeah, let's read them.
Then Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because this famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he moved them into the cities from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other end. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had rations allotted to them by the Pharaoh, and they ate their rations which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore, they did not sell their lands.
So the question is, who's farming? Who's taking care of the livestock? We still have no answer to these questions. I said we're going to read them in the next two verses, but I was wrong. We're almost there. We haven't quite got there yet.
I got a good Message translation if you want to hear it.
Yeah, let's see what the Message garbage translation says.
So Joseph bought up all the farms in Egypt for Pharaoh. Every Egyptian sold his land. The famine was that bad. That's how Pharaoh ended up owning all the land, and the people ended up slaves. Joseph reduced the people to slavery from one end of Egypt to the other. So Joseph made his own people slaves, and this is how they became slaves?
The Israelites? No.
Because it says that?
Not quite.
No?
So it's an interesting situation because the narrator is basically saying that all of the Egyptians, and probably the Israelites as well,
that's a given.
every single person became slaves, and none of them owned any land.
Yeah.
But that's confusing because in Exodus, verse 1, chapter 1, I mean, verse 8 through 12, it talks about how they became slaves. It says, "Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph, and he said to the people, 'Look, the people of the children of Israel are more mightier than we. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and it happen in the event of war that they also join our enemies and fight against us and go up out of the land.' Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with burdens, and they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were in dread of the children of Israel." So if they're all already slaves, and obviously they didn't become more slaves. So I think the verses prior are a little hyperbolic. I think they're just using that narrative to paint the famine as being super, super extreme.
That's the problem with the Bible, though. A lot of this is, exaggerative, what have you, but you can never tell which one it is. So, you know what I mean?
Well, this time I'm serious. If you read 23 through 25, you get the answer to all the questions that we've been asking.
Maybe we should have read that first.
Sorry.
It would be confusing. All right. Then Joseph said to the people, "Indeed, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh. 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the field and for your food, for those of your households, and as food for your little ones." So they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." So by selling themselves to Pharaoh, they really were just paying a heavy tax.
They were just paying a heavy tax. The language here is super over the top. They weren't slaves in the proper sense, and if they sold all of their land and moved into the city, well, then who's farming and who's taking care of the animals? Well, nobody. So the real answer is that the language of the chapter is just being over the top. People are still farming the land. They're still raising animals and whatnot. They've got a pretty heavy tax burden to pay on top of it, basically.
I also read yours there because I thought it was mine.
I don't know why.
Because it was the first one.
Yours are always in blue.
Yeah, but I don't.
You see how I make yours blue and mine are red?
Yeah, but I it's the first one, and mine is always the first one. You know what I mean?
Wait, you didn't have a comment. There's nothing for you to read.
Right, so it must have been mine.
You didn't like that passage for some reason.
Yeah.
All right, let's read. We're almost at the end. Let's read 26.
And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day that Pharaoh should have 1/5, except for the land of the priests, which did not become Pharaoh's. So it did all become his land then. But they were able to basically use it as long as they gave him 1/5.
Essentially, yeah, they're like tenant farmers at that point.
Does that sound bad?
It's not great.
Kind of sounds shady, but
I mean, they're doing it in Vietnam.
What?
They still do it in other countries like Vietnam.
What?
Just annex people's land.
Oh, and then what?
Nothing. You lose your land.
Oh,
It's a real thing that still happens in like in developing nations.
or eminent domain, or what have you.
Yeah. Actually, knew someone from Vietnam. That's why they ended up over here. They owned a number of different properties, and they had a textile business, and their grandmother had a bunch of land, and the government one day just said, "This land is ours. You don't get paid for it. You don't get any rewards. It's ours now." And that was it. That was the end of the story. And it created a huge economic issue for them because that was basically her retirement.
Yeah.
And so they're like, screw it, we're getting out of here.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah.
At least in America, I mean, they do pay you fair value.
Yeah, they have to. And typically, it's actually above fair value, to be honest. Anyways, I had a question.
Yes.
It says, to this day, Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day. I wonder when that really is, when it says to this day.
I guess when it was written, right?
It definitely has to be when it was written.
Yeah.
But I was curious, and I didn't really have time to look into it, to see in the Egyptian records if there was ever a record of them collecting a 1/5 tax. And if we could find that in the record, we might actually be able to figure out when to this day is referring to.
So we'd know when it was written.
We at least have some boundaries.
Okay.
Right? Something to think about this week.
Yeah, we'll definitely not forget that.
Right, exactly.
So what's the relevance of the priests in their land? Is it just because the priests were the ones who wrote this and so had a stake in the land, or?
That's my thought. So my thought, because remember the priests in the Old Testament, when they get an allotment of land, they kind of get special treatment. For example, they always have the right of redemption of their land if they lose their land. They don't get an actual inherited tribal allotment, but they can live anywhere they want to. There's special rules that they get as well. There's some special treatment that they get because they're priests. So my understanding is that they're kind of reading the Levitical rules into the Egyptian story. Whether or not this was on purpose or not, I don't know. Is it possible that the Egyptian priests or the Egyptian priestly class had special treatment in Egypt? It's possible. I don't know enough about Egyptian priests to know what their lifestyle was like or how they were treated. So it's possible that what the narrator is saying here is just, flat true. I don't know that, to be honest. But it is interesting that the priests here in Egypt kind of get special treatment. It's almost like the narrator is from the priestly class and wants to point out that priests should get special treatment.
Or maybe this is true because the Pharaoh knows that you don't mess with.
That's very likely. In fact, in some of the Hittite temple cleansing rituals, there's a lot of rules for how priests are to be dealt with, because priests are like your first, we'll say, line of defense between you and your deity, right? So it's important that the priest is always up for the task. Yeah.
So, 27.
Mhm.
So Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there and grew and multiplied exceedingly.
Okay. I think this goes to what we were saying before. How is it that Jacob's family are growing and multiplying and getting rich exceedingly if they're all slaves?
So obviously they're not slaves.
Yeah, obviously they're not. I think the truth of the matter is that Joseph didn't make everybody slaves. He imposed a heavy, heavy tax upon them. And this is kind of hyperbolically.
It's possible that tax was imposed so that they could continue with the grain storing up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you need to function the government still yet.
Mm.
So yeah, I think verse 27 points pretty squarely to the idea that it really was just a tax. They weren't, the whole nation of Egypt didn't like become slaves, I don't think. So yeah. Want to do 28 and 29?
And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, Now, if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me. So we're assuming all of this last stuff was written by the south, north. Who called Jacob Israel?
I don't know. I have the Bible by Richard Elliott Freeman downstairs where he separates the individual sources.
Okay, because I thought you said that one of the
I mean,
priestly ones was more likely to go in.
Yeah, we can look it up real quick if you want to entertain for like 45 seconds. I can go grab it.
All right, yeah, 45 seconds. All right. So, All right, I only got 45 seconds on me, so you need to hurry. All right, ready? Go. So there was a man, and he was walking on the beach, and he found a lamp, and so he rubbed it, and a genie popped out. And the genie said, I will give you 3 wishes. So the man said, all right, I wish I had a brand new car. And then poof, there was a brand new car. Then the man said, you know what? I wish the back was the back of the car was filled with money. And poof, it was filled with money. And then he said to the genie, you know, I can't really think of what I should wish for. And so the genie said, all right, well, when you think of it, just say, I wish. And all right, here we are.
Gotta finish the joke.
And so he's driving down the road and turns on the radio, and it's playing that, you know, Oscar Mayer Wiener song. Oh, I wish I were an Oscar Mayer Wiener. And the guy starts singing along, and then he turns into a hot dog.
That one again, huh?
It's a classic.
It's a okay, so listen to this. According to Richard Elliott Freeman, starting in 47 verses 13, where it says there was no bread in the land of Egypt because the famine was very heavy, all of that narrative, all the way through verse 26, is from the Elohist, from the northern tribe. And then verse 27 is from the Yahwist, where it says, and Israel lived in Egypt in the land of Goshen, and they held property in it. And then there's an interlude from the priestly source where it says, and they were fruitful and multiplied very much, and Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years, and Jacob's days, the years of his life, were 7 years and 140 years. And then it goes back to the Yahwist, and it says, and Israel's days drew close, and he called his sons. So this latter portion of the chapter, what we're reading right now, is from the Yahwist, but almost the entire chapter preceding it was from the north. Because remember, the priestly source and the Elohist source are from the north. So it's really interesting. You're right. When he's called Israel, at least according to Richard Elliott Freeman and the documentary Hypothesis, the mentioning of Jacob as Israel is definitely a southern Judean Yahwist trend. Yeah,
because Israel meant a little more to them than the north, right?
It makes a lot of sense too in this part of the narrative too, because there's another promise. Just like, remember when Eleazar put his hand under the thigh of Abraham? That was part of a Yahwist narrative. We have the same thing here in Genesis 47 with the promise of, the hand, and the cupping. Excuse me.
Yeah, you can.
So anyways, yeah, very interesting. I need to leave this book up here so we can refer to it week after week because it's really interesting. Verses 29 through 31.
Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place. And he said, I will do as you have said. Then he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed.
Yeah, so it seems pretty customary to make deathbed promises in the book of Genesis and even Exodus. And I feel like I can see why it's like an important thing to do, because I think everyone has a dying wish, don't they? And for the person who's not dying, what is one way that you can honor your loved one? Well, by carrying out their dying wish, right?
Nobody refuses a dying wish.
Never. You wouldn't do it. I think this is just something that is like innate. It's kind of built into our human psyche. It makes the story to me feel very real. You know what I mean? Because you can just kind of put yourself in the situation. You can see it happening in your mind's eye, can't you? You know? And I kind of feel the same way. I even now, I don't know when I'm going to die, but I would love to, if I get cremated, I would love to have my ashes spread somewhere that were very meaningful to me. You know,
so you're doing it for the people that are still alive, not for you.
Maybe a little bit of both.
No, you wouldn't know anything about it because you're dead, but
it does bring closure as well. Like if, say, for example, you give somebody your dying wish, it preserves a memory of the person that's special, but I think it also gives you a sense of closure as well to somebody's life.
Yeah, I get it.
You can say
in their book.
Yeah, it's the final page. This is what he would have wanted, and you can give them the happy ending, or her, him or her. Although we never really hear about the matriarchs dying. They just unceremoniously die while giving birth, typically.
Except for Rachel.
Well, she was pretty beloved.
Yeah. There was a big to-do with, actually, Rebecca. She got her own cave, right?
Yeah, you're right. Both Sarah and Rebecca were buried ceremoniously. That's a good point. Yeah, they were actually. The matriarchs did get a pretty decent farewell, didn't they? Just not as much as the men.
Of course not.
Yeah, of course. Men are somehow more important.
Yeah.
Anyways, anything else?
No, we're done.
It's only 9:29. We got 1 minute left.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week, all three of you. And maybe we can finish out Genesis next week. But that's not going to happen, is it?
Well, we'll pray about it. It's like 3 more chapters.
Yeah. Why don't we just...
How short are those chapters?
Not short, but, I think the next one's pretty short.
Maybe.
So let's just start at like 5 and get all...
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
5 and go to 9:30?
We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, guys, it's been real.
Cheers. Have a great night. We'll see you in a week.
All right. Bye.